everyone. This is Angela, and you're listening to Homeschool Unrefined, the podcast where we keep homeschool simple, real, and fun.
And this is Maren. You've got episode 106, Where Our Kids Are Differently Wired, with Debbie Reber. And we're going to talk with her in just a few minutes, which I'm so excited for you to hear.
Yep.
But first, we just want to say hi to everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for coming back week after week to support us here. And if you're new, welcome. We're so glad you're here too. We also want to give a shout out to our patrons. Thank you so much for supporting us financially and just being part of our community on Patreon. It is a great community. We love hearing from you there and getting to know you better.
Yeah. And if you're interested in that, you can go to patreon.com/homeschoolunrefined. A little bit about our podcast. Here at Homeschool Unrefined, we are here to encourage you in your homeschooling journey, help you to take some things off of your plate, realize what you're doing is good, and help you to be yourself. So,
yes, for sure.
Thank you for being here.
Yes. Angela, let's just start out this episode talking about the Oscars.
Okay. Yeah.
They were last night.
Yep.
We're recording this the day after the Oscars.
Yep.
And I know you were especially super excited about it this year. I know we both really like to watch the Oscars.
We do.
But you were really on fire for it this year.
Because every year I tell myself that I'm going to watch all the movies
that
are up for Best Picture, and I don't. And then I'm like, when I'm watching it, I'm kind of disappointed because I didn't get to see them all. So I really don't know who I think should win. Mm-hmm. So this year I was like on a mission to watch them all. And I watched most of them. I missed The Favorite. I didn't watch The Favorite.
Oh, yeah. But you know what? After last night, now I need to see The Favorite.
Really?
Yeah. I'm more excited about it now.
Yeah, I'm more excited about it. But also I'm not into the, I don't know, like British.
Yeah.
I'm not into those kind. I don't even know what it's about. You are?
I'm a little more into it than you are, probably.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I'm not like super into it, but yeah. And also I think it's more funny than I thought it was.
Yeah, right.
Than I thought beforehand.
Yes.
So
yes.
Especially I loved hearing, the Best Actress.
Olivia Colman.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I think that came out of the blue. I don't think anybody thought she was going to get it.
Poor Glenn. Glenn Close was supposed to win.
Poor Glenn. I know. I kind of thought, and I really thought Lady Gaga was going to get it.
You did. Okay.
Mm-hmm. She was the person. I mean, well, that movie blew me away.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
and it was mainly because of Lady Gaga.
Yeah.
It was mainly because of her. So I really thought she would win. But it's always so exciting to watch someone who did not think they were going to win.
No, she was totally surprised.
Totally surprised.
And then she got up there and she was funny. And I was like, oh, I don't even know her, but I like her.
I like her.
And she's going to be in The Crown. Did you hear that?
No.
She's playing Queen Elizabeth.
As the
middle-aged.
Yes. Great.
I know. So I'm excited for season 3 of that show because now that I know her. Yeah. Now that I know her.
Now that we know her so well after that speech. So what did you think of the Oscars?
I thought it was great. I was a little apprehensive because there was no host. I was like, how is this going to go?
Yeah.
But I kind of liked it.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of time spent on the host.
I think it was a little shorter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which was good. I liked that. I loved most of the movies that were up for Best Picture. I really love them. So, I loved A Star Is Born so much.
Yeah.
But I loved all the other ones too. Like I was also torn about like who should win what because I just thought, I don't know, I thought everybody was amazing. So I loved Black Klansman. That was like my favorite. Like if you haven't seen Black Klansman, you got to see it. I mean, I feel like it's a must see for everybody.
I know.
It really
brought. Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, it made me want to have a Spike Lee movie fest because I used to watch Spike Lee movies all the time.
Oh, you did?
In the 90s, when I was in high school, college, had time to watch movies, and it it made me want to go back though. He is brilliant.
Yeah, obviously. So I was really happy for him that he won Best Director.
Oh, I know.
Yeah,
it was kind of cool because I feel like all night he was like playing so cool in his seat. just real stone face all night.
Oh, yeah.
And then he won and just like,
Yeah.
oh,
I know.
just let it all out. He really didn't he didn't hold back. And I thought that was so great.
Yep. Me too.
Loved that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts about the Oscars? You don't have to come up with stuff.
No, I have so many. We could do a whole episode.
Oh, I know.
And I'm like, how much should I say? I know. Maybe our next...
do a Patreon episode.
Yeah, our next LTW Extra is going to include a lot of my Oscar talk, probably.
So get ready. Maybe watch a movie or two before you listen, everyone.
Okay.
That'd be great.
And what were your top movies that I know besides A Star Is Born? What else did you?
Well, I didn't watch as many as you.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm trying to think. What were the other choices? Black Klansman was really
Black Panther. I was really happy for Black Panther.
Yeah, I was gonna say Black Panther. You know, I'm not like a big action.
Yeah, me either.
movie person. My husband is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have watched a lot of action movies. And I loved Black Panther. I watched it several times.
Yeah, me too.
Let's just say. Yeah.
Yeah, my kids want to rewatch that one often, so we do.
Yep. And I'm totally okay with that because it's good. So great. Yep. Yeah. So I'm super happy for...
You should watch Roma. Now, I know like there's some mixed reviews about Roma, but I watched it on Netflix by myself, and I was expecting to dislike it because, you know, it's in black and white and it has subtitles. So I think that's really a turnoff for a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was so good. It was so good. I was blown away. It was really good.
I mean, all the movies I want to see. It's just I didn't want to be stressed out watching them. So I just thought I'm not going to try and shove everything in. I just can't. I was just feeling too busy about a few other things in my life. And so I just thought I probably won't enjoy it as much. So I'm just going to let myself watch them in time. So, but what I need to make myself watch them now. Cause a lot of times what happens is when the Oscars is over, when the Oscars are over. Yeah. And then I'm like, well, it's kind of old news now or I already know. So, but I need to do it.
Have you seen Bohemian Rhapsody?
No.
Oh.
And that is on the top of my list. I need to go see that. Or I need to see it.
Yeah, you do.
I remember when it first came out, it wasn't, it didn't come out with a loud bang, like people at first, I don't know. It didn't have a ton of talk right away.
Yeah.
And so it came out and actually I remember Sean and I went to a movie one night and it was one of the only choices and we were like, nah.
Yeah.
We didn't even go see it, which now I'm really regretting.
Yeah. Well, what'd you see instead?
I don't think we saw anything.
Oh,
I think we just did something else, but we were planning on seeing a movie.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
Yeah, I'm kind of dragging today though. I'm tired.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So I have a little Oscar. I want to say hangover, but I didn't drink. But it's like a hangover.
Sleep deprivation, basically.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on. We are so excited to share with you this interview, this chat that we had with Debbie Reber. She is the creator and host of the podcast Tilt Parenting. And she also wrote a book called Differently Wired, Raising an Extraordinary Child in a Conventional World. And I have to tell you, this book is something that I feel like should be just read for everybody.
Right.
I mean, not only if you have a child who is differently wired, but just for everybody. I think we are all kind of differently wired. And I just feel like it's so great to have this understanding about our world.
For sure.
Yeah. So anyway, and we ask her so many questions that I feel like just even go a little bit deeper, and she talks a little bit more about a lot of topics in her book. So I hope you really enjoy this conversation. Welcome, Deborah Reber, to our show. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
And maybe we'll just start off by having you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your story, of how you kind of became the creator and host of Tilt Podcast, the Tilt Parenting Podcast, and writing your book and all the amazing things that you've done.
Sure. Okay. So my story is really long and all over the place. So I'm going to give you the condensed version. But so I am the mom of one child. I have a 14-year-old child, a boy. And I used to, many years ago, I used to work in kids television, video production, and did that for a number of years and then started writing books in 2000 and published my first book actually in 2002. And for many years, I worked in the teen girl advocacy space. So I wrote books that were kind of self-help books for young women and teenagers. Did that for many years and spoke to those audiences. And I was so passionate about it because I considered myself to be a recovering teenager myself.
Yep.
Still am actually, but and then I had this son, I had this son in 2004 and I was still writing and working in the teen girl space. But as he grew up, and we realized, this is kind of a intense experience and this is not kind of the straightforward parenting journey I thought we'd be on. My energy started getting pulled in a different direction as advocate, as researcher, as, just the finder out of everything I could about this human's brain and figuring out a plan for him. And so about, I guess, 6 years ago, after a number of failed school experiences, we had this opportunity to move abroad and we changed everything up. And I just decided, you know what, I need to actually change my professional focus too, so I can take all the skills that I have in writing and curating content and just creating content to support teen girls. And I'm going to shift my audience and I'm going to support parents like me. So kind of, I found a way to make my personal and professional worlds collide in the best possible way.
Yeah. And then you started a podcast and you've written a book and you've done a TED Talk.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Well, I go all in when I do something. So I decided, it was 2016. I really wanted to create a podcast. That was because I'm a huge consumer of podcasts. I love the medium. Yep. So I launched Till Parenting specifically with the podcast in mind and hoping to create really just a supportive community for parents like me to know that they're not alone and that they had kind of a positive experience while they were looking for resources. Yeah. And because I'm a writer, I knew I would also write a book about this at some point. In fact, my agent, who's been my agent since before Asher was born, used to always say, "Oh, you'll write about this someday, but you need to live it more first." Yeah. And by 2017, I was like, okay, I'm ready to start writing. And I was lucky enough to partner with Workman Publishing to make this book happen. And it's just been it's been a great project for me to dive into, and the response has been so positive.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's exactly what we all needed.
Yeah.
And we've all been looking for that book for a long time. So we're so thankful for it.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I know a lot of our listeners have children who are differently wired. And so we want to just kind of start at the beginning. If somebody is suspecting that their child might have some learning differences, how do we know when it's time to get our kids tested? And what is the advantage to getting a diagnosis, or is there an advantage? Should we ever not get diagnosed because of a label? I'd love to hear your thoughts on those things.
Well, that's a whole episode right there. But, it is. So first of all, I just want to explain that differently wired is kind of an umbrella term that I use to describe anyone who's neurologically atypical. So it might mean having a diagnosis like ADHD or gifted or twice exceptional, or having a learning disability, or being anxious, or there might not be a diagnosis at all. So, but, parent has recognized that there's some unique needs there, or sensitivities with a child. So I always say to parents, if you suspect that your child's differently wired, they probably are, because I feel like, sometimes we get well-meaning advice from family or friends or even pediatricians who might look at our kids and think, well, this, all fits in the range of normal behavior for this age, bearing in mind developmental differences. But I feel like we have an instinct if we're kind of recognizing, no, this is more intense. This is more challenging. I kind of really think there's something going on here. In terms to answer your first question about when to get a child tested, my suggestion is if you feel that there's something getting in your child's way that's preventing them from thriving, whether that's thriving socially, whether that's thriving in school, for a lot of parents like me, it's the early elementary school years when it's like, okay, like in preschool, there is a wide range, but once we're in that more formal school setting and there are these expectations, and most kids are able to either read the social cues of the rest of the class and fall in line, or there are these kind of expectations for the milestones that they'll be reaching. And if at that point we're starting to see either lagging skills or a lot of emotional dysregulation or something, and we're getting information from the teacher, the school, that there are some challenges that are beyond the scope of what would be considered typical, then it can be helpful to get more information. However, here's what I would say about the labels, because it's a really tricky question.
Yeah.
The diagnostic process for kids, especially if they're in the traditional school system, is really about getting them services, right? So when your child is doing a neuropsych evaluation, whether it's at the school or you do it privately, they're often looking to get you a diagnosis that will enable you to get accommodations in school. So, and in fact, I found the whole process very confusing when we did our first, evaluation. And the woman who was doing it said, it's only as good as the services it gets you. And so that's just something to keep in mind. So if you're needing services, then having that label can be really helpful. At the end of the day, a label doesn't fix anything. A label doesn't tell us exactly what to do. It can provide context, so it can be useful in that way. And it's really ultimately, it's about supporting a child with deficits they may have and recognizing what their strengths are. That's what really matters at the end of the day. So I don't have a clear answer for you.
Okay.
But hopefully that gives you some things to think about.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot of not clear answers, with our kids. I mean, in every little part of their lives. So
yeah, and the guidelines are always changing, right? The criteria for different diagnoses is changing. It's always changing. A lot of times what looks like something in one environment might look different at home. So
yeah, I think for us, we have gotten a few diagnoses for one of our kids, and it really helped me just to understand. We're homeschooling, so we don't need to share that with like a bunch of teachers or anything, but it helped me just have the patience and the understanding and resources to figure out how to just support my child at home. So then it was completely worth it and so helpful for me.
Yeah.
So, I agree. I mean, it's been helpful for us. It's also helpful when you want to have that conversation with your child to help them understand, what's going on. Well, actually, this is because of the way your brain is wired, and you're not alone. And here's what it might look like for other people who are similar.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So specifically I'm just thinking about ADHD, but I think there are maybe some other diagnoses that are kind of like this. I think many people think it's more of an environmental problem where I have, because I have mentioned to people, well, my child has ADHD, and they're like, oh yeah, we all kind of have ADHD or whatever, it's, it's all the screens or whatever. But I just think, so, how do we know when a kid gets diagnosed with something, if it's like a subjective diagnosis, or is it based on real facts and science?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like ADHD is one of the most maligned of all the neuro variances, because there is a lot of misinformation out there about what it is, and it unfortunately is often thought to be just a result of bad parenting or not setting enough limits, or you mentioned screen time. Someone who is an expert in ADHD, or who really understand, there is a very clear criteria. It can be confusing to tease out because oftentimes the symptoms can overlap with symptoms, and I'm using that word symptoms in air quotes, but the traits of someone who's highly or profoundly gifted can actually look identical. The traits of someone who's has Asperger's or on the autism spectrum also can be. So there can be a lot of overlap there. But I think that, a child who has ADHD, and that's something that Asher has, that diagnosis of ADHD, I think they're the same person at home that they are at school, and I, also just homeschooling him. I remember that first year, like seeing him first of all, trying to teach him, and I didn't know what I was doing, but, and I would just see this kid moving, like just watching how he had to learn. And I was like, whoa, okay, I totally get it now. Like I just really understood it on a whole new level. And I'm grateful that I'm able to just go with it. He can learn that way because he's someone who likes to move, to be creative. But, I think the people who doubt that ADHD is a real diagnosis, honestly, like, I don't think we even need to deal with them, because who are they to say? They're just, they're not experts and who our kids are, and we don't need their approval.
Yeah. I loved in your book, you really tackled that about how you really kind of had to get over that leap of like just not worrying about what anybody else is thinking about how I am parenting my own child right now, because I know this is what he needs.
Yeah.
So that was so good, and just so validating. It was
not easy to do, right?
Yeah,
for any of us. It's like, I mean, we care what other people think. And
right.
Yeah. And being in the Netherlands, which is a very judgy, I was living in the Netherlands for 5.5 years, and it's a super judgy culture. And so it really gave me a lot of opportunity to practice that.
It's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
Great. So another thing that, another question that a lot of people have is, are the number of kids who are neurologically different growing? If so, is there anything that you think contributes to this? Or is it just that we're better able to diagnose now?
I think it's more of the latter. I think we just have a much better, I mean, I'm not an expert in this, so yeah, there may be environmental factors that are contributing to some of the increases in autism or ADHD. But, those are largely believed to be genetic. And I just think we're just so much better at knowing what to look for, especially even with girls. It used to be believed that the number of girls in the spectrum was much lower, same with ADHD. And actually now they're just recognizing, no, it presents differently in girls. And we actually think the numbers are pretty similar. So we're just learning more. If you think about, I mean, I'm older than you guys, but when I was in school, like there was not, like you were slow or you were like fine or you were smart, and that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's more of the latter, but again, I'm not an expert on the science behind this.
Yeah.
So this is a really big question. This could be another whole episode, but how can we change the paradigm of like how we're looking at these, like a growing number, I think, of differently wired kids, and it's becoming more normal to have many differently wired kids, or I mean, I don't know if the number is changing, like you said, but like we're understanding that there's so many differently wired kids around us all day. And how are we able to, or how can we change the paradigm for our culture right now?
Excuse me. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the big work that we have in front of us. I think having podcasts like this, having like open conversations about this and bringing it to the forefront is the first step. I'm a big proponent of parents who are raising differently wired kids kind of speak openly about our experiences so that they become more normalized, because there's so much stigma attached to different diagnoses. Yeah. And so that doesn't serve anybody. That keeps us all isolated. It hurts our kids, and it doesn't help school systems do the hard work they have to do in order to support the unique learners in their classroom. So I think just being vocal and speaking loudly about our truth is a huge part of that. And, you know, obviously the education system is kind of the biggest piece of this puzzle. And I don't believe that the traditional education model is really serving most students. You know, there are very few students who really thrive in that system.
Right.
So, you know, hopefully our kids can be part of the catalyst for change that will benefit everybody.
Right. So true.
So speaking of the educational system, you chose to homeschool your child who is differently wired. Why did you make that decision? And what do you think needs to change in public schools to better help all of our children? And again, this is another big question. That could be a whole podcast episode, but just love to get a few of your thoughts.
Well, in terms of our decision, I have a very good friend who is an educator and a child development specialist, and also has known Asher since he was an infant and has watched my whole journey. And as I bounced around from school to school, or he got kicked out of this or that program, I always would go to her, and she just started gently suggesting hey, he might be a homeschool kid. And I was like, he is not a homeschool kid, because I am not a homeschool parent.
Yep.
And, but, you know, by the time this opportunity came up to move to the Netherlands, and it was spring of 2013, we were in our third school in 3 years. So he was finishing up second grade. And I started calling all the international schools in Amsterdam area and just wondering, how do you deal with kids who, and I didn't get any return phone calls. So I was like, that's not a good sign. So, and this same friend was like, Debbie. She's like, listen, this child deserves to be homeschooled. He deserves that. And I was like, you know what? You're right. And so it was making that clean break and having this fresh start was a wonderful opportunity to try it. And we are in our 6th year of doing it. So he's thriving, and it's working out really well. I mean, it changes every year. It looks different, but we're in a really good space with it. And then in terms of what has to happen in schools, I mean, I think there's just so much education that has to happen, first of all. Most teachers get maybe one class, if that, when they're in school about, learning disabilities. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Yep. And so there's just a lack of understanding about what being neurodiverse or having asynchronous development or any of those things actually looks like. And so it's always looked at as bad behavior, and then treated it as such, and disciplined or tried to be, controlled in addressing the behavior, and as opposed to looking at what's underlying it. So I think teacher education is the first thing that has to happen, is just helping teachers know what to look for, how this presents, and then here are strategies to support kids. And then I was just reading, Education Week is doing a series on differentiated education, like a more individual model. And I think that even if it's small groups, but figuring out how to meet kids the way that they learn. I mean, Asher is not a kid who is going to produce a bunch of stuff in writing but that's not how he learns. But he could read something and be able to apply what he's just taken into any number, he just sees a different kind of a learner. Yep. But that's, there's just such a limited approach to how we demonstrate our intelligence or our understanding of things. And so we need to kind of take that apart and start over.
Right.
So
I can
just like
I can
that.
attest to that because Angela and I both were teachers before we became homeschool parents. And I can attest to not knowing what to do with kids who needed more than a classroom full of, 25 kids, So I definitely can understand that. And also I mean, so much of what you said really rings true with me. I have explained my children to other people, like saying, like probably most kids or a lot of kids, if they were in a classroom and had to read something and then, write something about what they learned, they could do it. Even if it wasn't their thing, it wasn't their favorite way to learn, they could step it up and read the book and write the report. Like, my child can't do that. It's not ideal for her anyway. And so, and I think, what I love, when I'm reading your book and listening to your podcast, I just think, oh, it would be so great if, public schools were more really tilted towards, maybe these differently wired children, because it would actually benefit everyone. Because even the kids who can step it up and do it, they most likely don't want to, or would rather learn a different way. And it would just think of the efficiency and the effectiveness that would happen in schools.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I really believe that raising differently wired kids, well, it can be challenging because it requires more effort maybe to find the right solutions for them. Mm-hmm. It's also such a gift because they demand that we expand, our ideas about what's possible, what things should look like, which is actually at the end of the day a very freeing, exciting thing. So parents raising neurotypical kids, they may not get to experience that sense of possibility or really seeing their child get excited and passionate about something because they haven't been given the chance to choose that and go deep into that.
Right. Totally. That's so true. And this kind of goes into my next question, which you've mostly answered, but if you have anything else to add to this, how can we best support our kids learning at home as parents of an exceptional child?
Yeah, I think I'll just say for me, it's been, I've had to do a lot of deprogramming of, what I thought school should look like, because even when we were homeschooling, I would still get caught up, and I still do sometimes get caught up in like, oh, but we haven't done this, or, there's still that desire to fit in somewhere or show that we're, and anytime I go down that road, I'm doing him a disservice. So, and I'm sure you guys do the same thing. I really try to focus everything on his areas of interest. It's very collaborative. And as he's getting older, it's been really exciting because I'm really having it be much more self-directed on his part. And I see my role as really more of a coach, like an executive functioning coach, and kind of supporting him. But I haven't been nagging him lately, which is so nice for all of us. And just trusting that he will get there. I'll just give a quick example. He was taking an online writing class, which was for homeschool kids. And I talked with her ahead of time and said, he has a lot of like executive functioning stuff, that he's a great writer once he's going, but to write an expository essay on something he's not interested would be like torture. And we tried it for a while, and finally I was like, this is not worth the anxiety. It's not like, we're homeschooling. You should enjoy school. Let's figure out another plan. We know you can write, but there are other curriculums. And just to have that freedom to say, let's let it go and choose something else. I know it felt great to him, and took that stress away.
For sure.
Yeah, it feels less to me for homeschool, when we change directions, it feels less like a failure than it's just like we're changing direction. We're going to try something else.
Yes.
And it feels so much. Yes. It feels much more positive for sure.
Yeah. It's a win because you've learned something new and now
totally.
or you've eliminated one thing. So you're going to move on to something else you're trying. It's like, I'm one step closer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So many kids who are differently wired also have anxiety. Does that come along with any type of neurological difference, or how does that fit in?
Yeah, there is a high correlation of anxiety, especially with kids on the spectrum, and with kids with ADHD. They tend to go hand in hand. Oftentimes, from what I've read, again, I'm not a PhD or something, but from what I've read, that anxiety often stems from the challenges that they're facing, often in social settings or in traditional schools where they know that they're different or they're struggling to produce or to kind of keep up. So yeah, and it could just be the wiring, that more sensitive, right? Hypersensitive or maybe overly empathic. A lot of differently wired kids are. And so they feel things. A lot of gifted kids, that also goes with anxiety because they're just, their emotional intelligence or the way that they're sometimes consuming material that is beyond their ability to really handle their maturity, or they can just feel so deeply about what's happening in the world. So yeah, there is a high correlation, but often, especially if it's school related, once they get detoxed, if you pull them out of school, that anxiety can go away pretty quickly.
Yeah, for sure. So something that this is me personally asking you, how can we, it's really sometimes difficult to discipline a child who's differently wired because there's a lot of needs that are happening that are probably maybe not getting met, or we're still trying to figure something out. So how do we discipline a child who's differently wired?
Well, so this is for me just a continual journey of trying to figure this out, and it's changed a lot. And I would say that we don't even really do any actual discipline in our house. We certainly did when he was younger because we didn't know what else to do, and sometimes the behavior was so big or maybe dangerous, or that was our default. We need to shut this down and, let's figure out how to get it to stop. Over the years, we have completely shifted away from that model to, first of all, using a lot of, Dr. Ross Greene's collaborative and proactive solutions model, which is trying to identify problem areas and in a neutral time, strategize how to work through them. That has been a game changer for us. Also using the positive discipline approach, which when I read that book, I knew about it, but when I really, really read it to understand it, like 5 years ago, it blew my mind. And it also changed everything when I started recognizing that everything that is bad behavior is because of a lagging skill. And our job is to get curious about what's going on and meet that need or help develop that skill. And so once I made that shift and not taking it personally, which I still do sometimes, but it has really helped. So we actually don't do any sort of discipline. We do, again, he's 14 now, so it's a little different. We're in a different stage. Before we were at this stage, we were probably doing a lot of just kind of let's calm down, coping strategies, and then not dealing with it until everyone's in a different place, and then talking about what went wrong. Always doing a restitution. That was been a big thing. So if something of mine was destroyed, whatever happened. At another time when everyone's calm, like, so what kind of restitution would you like to do? Would you like to help me? And give him an option just so he would have to make amends in whatever way. But we found that to be much more effective than any sort of traditional punishment or discipline that might involve any sort of shaming, because
For sure.
our kids don't want to do these things.
Yeah, right.
Totally.
I know people are going to want to know the name of that book that you just mentioned, Positive Discipline. Do you know the author?
Let's see if I can see it on my shelf over there. I will tell you, and it's.
You know what? We'll put it in the show notes. So
Okay.
You don't need to tell us.
Yeah,
now.
I should know it. It's kind of the Bible of that philosophy of, and it's really dense. I will just say it's a lot. It's a lot to go through. And there are people who do courses, parent training, just using that philosophy, but it's really effective, and it feels really good. Once you start using it, you can eliminate a lot of that angst.
Right.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Is it Jane Nelsen?
Yes.
Is that the one?
Is it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jane Nelsen's the author. We'll put that in the show notes. All right.
Awesome.
So we know that it's especially important for kids who are differently wired to learn how to self-regulate and self-evaluate. How can we teach our kids these important skills when they might not be strong in those areas?
Yeah, I feel like it's an ongoing conversation. I'm really into self-knowledge. Like, I think that is one of the best gifts we can give kids. So one of the things that we do, and that I think is an easy way, is to just talk about everything out loud. Talk about what we're noticing our kids doing, but also talk about our own things that we're working on, like our own growth and how we deal with frustration, or if we're needing to have our own coping routine, like model that for them, explain our process and what that looks like. Well, I got really upset and I'm working on that. I should have walked away earlier. Do you know what do you think I could have done that would have, so it's just this ongoing conversation with them. And I actually need you to ask the second half of the question again, because I went somewhere else.
That's okay. How can we teach our kids these important skills when they might not be strong in those areas, which I think you kind of alluded to, just like by modeling?
Yeah, modeling. And I also think it can be helpful to work with your child to develop a coping strategy, like a coping routine. Yeah. And that might be something that changes a lot. Or also noticing when you're about to enter a situation that has the potential to be a trigger for them. Yeah. So talking, like an example, like games are really hard for a lot of kids, because if the game doesn't go their way or they lose or something, they might explode or get really dysregulated. So, yet a lot of our kids really love games, on play dates or whatever. So if, having a conversation with them first, like, oh, this is that game that there's a pretty good chance you're going to lose. So what's your plan? Like, how would you handle that?
Yeah.
And you can practice it with them. You can role play, like you can give them a script and have them say it. Sometimes what we used to do is, if something was handled in a way that was, if I was spoken to in a really rude way or an aggressive way or something, I'd be like, cut. Let's try that again. Can you leave the room and come back in and try saying that a different way? That's so good. Even just practicing like that, without anger or without any kind of affect, but just like, okay, we're going to do that one again. Yeah. What do you think you could say differently? That doesn't work now that my kid's a teenager, but when they're younger, that can be a really effective way to get them to recognize, okay, if I want to get what I want, then I'm going to have to speak more respectfully.
Right. And I think for us personally, I think getting that diagnosis really helped me teach my daughter, especially to have language, even just around what she needs. Like, you're going to probably need this more in your life. You're going to need to say no to these things or yes to these things more, or speak up for yourself when you need something. And so I think those skills kind of out of necessity have had to get built early.
Yeah. And as they get to know their strengths and their areas of lagging skills, just helping them develop language around that. Like, this is something that's actually, I notice you're really good at this. This is interesting, but this is something that can sometimes hang you up. So let's talk about what's the strategy you could use if the situation comes up. I think that preparation goes a long way with these kids. so they can feel confident too in different situations.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, Debbie, we loved having you on the show. Thank you so much. We are going to continue to ask you a few more questions on Patreon. So if you're a Patreon supporter, you're going to get to hear that. But before we go, could you just tell everybody where to find you and, you know, the name of your book, the name of your TED Talk, so people can get clued into all that good stuff?
Sure. So my website is tiltparenting.com, and that's where the podcast lives. Mm-hmm. That's where I've got a blog. There's now parent groups that are starting, live parent groups all over the US, and you can find out more about those. And then all the social media places, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, all at Tilt Parenting.
Okay.
And my book is called Differently Wired, Raising an Exceptional Child in a Conventional World. And my TEDx talk, which I did in Amsterdam the day before the movers came.
Oh, wow.
So it was a little stressful, but it's called Why the Future Will Not Be Normal. And I really wanted to expand the conversation so we could recognize the value of neurodivergence in the workplace and in society.
Yeah. Well,
I loved that.
I loved it too, and you did not look nervous. You look like a total professional.
I had a good day. Thank you.
It was great. It was great. Yeah. So, okay, thank you, Debbie.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to loving this week.
Yes.
Maren, what are you loving this week?
Okay, I am loving a drink from Starbucks, and it's a very simple drink, but it's mind-blowing to me. I usually just order coffee. Just a dark roast coffee. And now that I am not doing tons of dairy, I have been getting different kinds of milk, right? I love getting coconut milk from Starbucks in my coffee. And one day, this is just a little story leading up to what I love. One day I went in and I said, I would like a dark roast with coconut milk. And she said, the barista asked me, would you like that steamed? Would you like your coconut milk steamed first? And I was like, yeah, sure. Yeah, I want it steamed. So she steamed it, and it was so amazing.
Steamed meaning heated up.
Heated up and like a tiny little bit frothy. You know, like not super frothy, just enough.
Not cold.
Light.
Yeah.
And and it tastes a little sweet. Without all the sweetener in it. It is just my favorite. It's my favorite now. And
That's
now
awesome.
I sometimes get coconut milk lattes.
Okay, what's the difference between a coconut milk latte and because I don't know, a coconut milk latte versus your coffee with coconut milk, steamed coconut milk?
Yeah, a coconut milk latte is like, it's a lot more milk.
Okay.
A lot more of the coconut milk, also steamed.
Okay.
And then like a shot of espresso.
Okay. So it tastes more milky.
Yeah, it's like a milkier version of the coffee.
Okay. I love that coffee shops are using alternative milks. I just have to say, I've been waiting for that. I was waiting for that when I used to drink coffee. Now I don't. Stopped. But I love it so much.
But do you ever get coconut milk like tea lattes or anything like that?
So I should have had this for my loving this week because I found a drink so when I go to Starbucks or a coffee shop, I just get tea, but I don't like it because it's so hot. If you've ever had tea at a coffee shop, it's like burning hot. So you have to wait like 15 minutes to be able to drink it. And then I just don't really like it. I don't know. It's not that exciting to me. I'll drink it, but it's not like, ooh, I really want to go to Starbucks, because I don't. But I have discovered that you can get an herbal tea like as a latte.
Yeah.
With like almond milk, or I've done it with almond milk. So if I get an almond milk tea latte, that actually tastes really good. Like, I'm kind of excited to get that.
Nice.
So, yeah.
So, okay. And I just have to say that I have a little bonus loving this week, which is at home. What I like to put in my coffee now, or what I have been putting in my coffee lately, is this, it's oat milk, and it's called OATLY. Yeah. OATLY. Okay. And I get it from Target. And I got the idea from Reese Witherspoon on Instagram. She posted about it one day, how she's loving her oat milk. And I was like, I got to try this. And it's so good at home to have that with my coffee now. I still like nut pods, but I I just like having a variety of things to put in my
Yeah.
coffee.
Yeah.
So that's great. But the coconut milk is really good if you want a sweet, if
Okay.
you're into this, like having a sweet drink.
Right.
So
Yeah.
anyway,
That's awesome.
so nice to have choices.
It is.
All right, Angela, what are you loving this week?
Okay. So I am loving a planner. I got a paper planner, which I mentioned on Patreon. I don't know how long ago. A month. I think our last major Patreon episode, I talked about this. But I have to share because at that point, I'd just gotten it. Now I've had it probably a month.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know if I would actually use it because I've been like digital. I've been digital for I don't know how long. I haven't had a paper planner in a long time. But my goal is always to like put things in the phone to be digital. But what happens is I end up with these random pieces of paper all over the house, like with like to-do lists or grocery lists or whatever that just don't make it into my phone. And I realized I just had the thought, would I want a paper planner? Because I've always resisted it, but because I don't want to have
because a lot of people do. And I mean, a lot of people still do.
A lot of people still do. But I didn't want to be tied down to something that I had to carry around with me everywhere.
Right.
And I think I envisioned that it would have to have my calendar in it, which I do not want to have my calendar in a paper planner. I want my calendar in my phone.
Sure.
But, okay, so I found this planner. It's from Plum Paper Company. So it's a Plum planner. And it doesn't have, it's not a calendar. It is a calendar in that, like, it'll have Monday and then all the things I want to do on Monday, like my to-do list, kind of.
Okay.
But it's not like, what is my schedule on Monday or what appointments do I have? It's just like my to-do list for Monday.
You're not bringing this to your appointments and making, to your doctor's office and opening it up and looking for a day.
That wouldn't work for me because I don't even have a purse. I just carry my phone, because I don't want anything extra with me. So no, the nice thing is it stays right by my computer and it's eliminated my like random papers all over the place because it's so just like where I keep any random notes that I might have. And I got the customizable planner. I hope I can link to it in the show notes. I will try, but I customized it so that like I have like on Monday I have a little section for priorities and there's 3 things. So like I like to have 3 if I get these 3 things done today, or make a phone call and whatever, do these 3 things, I'll like feel successful.
Great job.
And then I have a section for work, so if there's anything for the podcast I need to do, I can write it there. And then I have another, like, I don't know, and then there's a whole section for what's important this week. And then my favorite part of it is the habit tracker, which I'm going to try and explain this. But what it is just a little grid, and I can put some habits that I want to do. Like mine are drink 3 water bottles full of water.
Yep.
Read 20 minutes.
Great.
Do Duolingo. Stuff like that, right? Like little things that I want to do every day. And then there's a grid. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And you can just mark off when you've done it. And it's just like in your weekly spread. So it's just sitting there all week. So I'm really motivated by checking that off when I've done it. I don't know if that's for everybody. I'm not sure you'd like that, but I am motivated by the check mark when I finished it.
Yeah, well, I have found I am motivated by my own plans. Like, like if I'm making my own plans to do something, I like to check them off. Yeah, for sure.
So I love that part of it. So anyways, the other good thing about them is you can start in any month. So if you think this sounds great and you want to do it, you could order one now and it could start like whatever date you'd want it to start, and it would last 12 months. And you can, like I said, I got the customizable one, so I added extra pages for notes, and
so great.
I love it.
So, okay, so here's my question, and I know I may have already asked you this on Patreon, but now I can't remember. If you have a random note, a random thing you need to write down quick, where does that go? Is there is that where you put it in the back in the note section, or
no? Like on the week, there's some random like blank boxes at the bottom.
Okay.
And I can just like write something there. Like last week I wrote an address to some place I had to go, and I don't know, some podcasts I wanted to listen to.
So great.
Wrote those just randomly. And then like if I don't get to some things, I can just look and transfer it to the next week if I want to.
Yep.
So
Love
like
that.
And then I could go on, but there's like notes at the end of each month. So, for the month of February, there's like 3 pages of notes, and I would write like a packing list, like things I needed to
Yeah.
pack for a trip.
Sure.
'Cause I'm just kind of always thinking about that, or I don't know, podcast stuff.
That's so great. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah. So it's working out when I wasn't sure it would. But I think I think the verdict is in that I'm loving it. So thank you everybody for listening. You can find us on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram at Homeschool Unrefined. We also have a website, homeschoolunrefined.com, where you can find links to everything that we talked about. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening.
Homeschool Unrefined is created and produced by Maren Gorse and Angela Sizer. Ethan Miller is our editor, and Amanda Ginn is our VP of all the important things.